how did you get into procurement?
I imagine a lot of people answer this question in a similar way, which is that it basically happened by chance. I left university with a degree in English literature and French, which is not necessarily the most traditional route into a career in procurement, but I knew I wanted to do something in the commercial world. I just had no idea what that would be. So I applied for and got onto a graduate management scheme with a high street retailer, sadly no longer with us. And at the end of that, I was in the sourcing department. And that's where I've stayed, whether I've been called, sourcing, strategic sourcing, purchasing, procurement, global procurement, but essentially buying. And I've stayed really because I learned from my earliest experiences that this game is about people and it's about relationships. And ultimately, you do business with people, not with organizations. And that if you have an interest in people and like people and learn about people, it's the most valuable thing that you can do. And that's what sustained me from buying T-shirts in Bangladesh through to beer cans to herbs and spices and then into the broader world of indirects.
It's funny, isn't it, David? I too studied English literature
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because I've always loved to read and write, and I thought I was going to be
Yeah.
a sort of creative director in an ad agency. Lo
Yeah.
and behold, I soon realised I wanted to find a commercial role as well, hence help
Yeah.
in recruitment. So interesting. Do you still read and write?
I don't write as much as I would like. I find that you need the time and the discipline to do that, and I at the end of the
It's
day, I
really
struggle
tough.
to do that. Yeah, I don't read as much as I used to, but at the moment I'm on with Hilary Mantel's third book in the trilogy of Thomas Cromwell, which is
Yep,
a bookstop of a doorstop of a book. But yes, thoroughly enjoying it. She's an incredible writer.
I've got the first one of that trilogy on the bookshelf. It's on my to-do list to read. I've heard it's excellent.
Get in. You need to give it some time and patience because her style is quite different, but it's well worth it. Well
Nice,
worth it.
good. I'm looking forward to it. So what are the roles and responsibilities the procurement function holds within your organization, and how do you function out?
Yeah. So procurement in legal, I work for a law firm, is a relatively young function. So I'm only the second person, for example, to do this role in the firm. And the function was originally created to provide some level of contract oversight, a little bit of category management, and an order desk function, which was largely manual. And that's the original inception of it. And so we as a function are only about 5 years old. I am globally accountable, but most of our spend is in Germany and the UK. So my team is split between Germany and the UK. And the way that we work is that over a certain set level of thresholds, we're involved and we're running the process and we are running a procurement process, if you will. And then below those thresholds, we have guidance and we have policy and process and documents, and we're there to advise and entertain. But because of the size of the team, we can't do everything. So that's effectively the team that I inherited. Where we are now, I would say that we, like most procurement heads, my challenge is to move us to being more strategic value delivery rather than tactical. And I think we've made really good progress in that. So I would say that we have a much more visible role than we did 4 years ago when I joined. I would say that in a lot of areas of the business, they would cite us as strategic partners, really understanding the value that we deliver. And then the work that we're on with at the moment is really driving up that value to try and really sort of move us from that more tactical role into a much more strategic value adding role, using technology, really driving category management into the firm and educating people what that is. So that's how we play it at the moment.
Nice. And what are some of the challenges you and the team are currently facing?
Well, I suppose everybody is going to answer that question with COVID right now, but I would say that we mentioned this just before we started recording. If you'd asked me that 2 months ago, it was a much bigger challenge. People were starting to feel jaded, fed up. And as a leader, one of the challenges I find, and probably still find actually, it's that balance in this world where the world we're in at the moment, how do you balance maintaining the drive that we've got, the momentum that we've got, the ambition that we've got, and the progress we're making, versus the quite varied emotional states of the people that you need to deliver that, and knowing who needs a bit more of a helping hand, a bit more of a support, who needs, frankly, almost ordering, you must take some time off, you must take some time away from your desk, and let me help you do that. And I think that it's that balance that I think is probably the biggest challenge we have at the moment, so that we don't lose the momentum, but we're conscious of how people are. And then I think it's then the challenge is thinking about post-COVID, right? So, and there will be a post-COVID. It is going to happen. And I think, again, as leaders in procurement, we have to be thinking about what do supply chains need to look like. So we've adjusted throughout the course of the pandemic, but then we're going to come out of that, and what do we need them to look like? How do we need them to operate for what our business is going to demand of us? And then for us especially, COVID has been frankly a springboard to accelerate the work that we were doing anyway. So we've had spotlight, which is good. We've had support, which is good, and we've had investment, which is fantastic. Really, really lucky sort of to secure the buy-in for it. But once we're coming out of that, and people start to sort of take a breath and think, well, actually, we've come through it and we're off. How do we keep procurement's seat the way we've got it to at the moment? How do I maintain a relevance? How do I ensure that our value proposition remains relevant to my senior leadership team within the firm as much as it has been over the course of the last year? So that's something that is constantly on my mind at the moment.
Interesting. And what are you most passionate about when it comes to procurement?
So I thought about this earlier, and actually it's a really easy answer. There's three things, right? So you only said most. I'm going to give you three answers. Right? So the ability procurement gives you, or any function, I guess, but for me it's procurement, to set out your strategy, work with your team to believe in it and to see it executed, and then that feeling when you reflect back with your team, look what we've done. We set out a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it doesn't really matter. That's what we set ourselves to do, and look what we've managed to do. Yeah. And look actually how we've managed to over deliver it. And you've managed to surprise people and delight people along the way. I don't think there's anything really better than that, actually, to see the fulfillment of what you wanted to do. But that's one thing. The second thing, though, specifically in procurement, is I have a real belief that organizations miss out on a huge amount of value through your wider supplier ecosystem. We have a tendency sometimes to say, I will pay you to do that, and I'll put you in that box, and that's it. But there's a huge amount of value. If you're partnering with the right people, if you're doing your strategic sourcing in the right way to select the right partners, then the additional value that you can start working on, the innovation ideas that you can work on, the relationships that you can build, the areas you can get into that you hadn't thought about at the start of the relationship. One of the suppliers I have at the moment, we engaged, really built over the course of 2 years, a really large business relationship, now broadening out into where they can help with Freshfields' sustainability objectives. Where do they overlap and align? So nothing commercial about it whatsoever, but just a broader cultural partnership. That I find building genuine strategic partnerships really excites me. And then the third thing is people, without which the first two can't be done, right? Yeah. So it's creating that environment where people are working collaboratively with a real sense of camaraderie, seeing people do fabulous work and giving each other recognition for what they do, and taking a real pride in it as a team, and helping people. This is the thing that I'm really passionate about, is helping people understand their own strengths. I'm a big believer in this, that there are things that people are naturally good at, that you'll be naturally good at, that I'm not, I just can't do. And for you, you'll think, well, surely everyone can do that. And I'll say, no, James, I haven't got a hope in hell of doing that. But helping people understand that and see that's their power, And then, well, if you're good at that and you're good at that, and I connect two of you together, suddenly I've got a really powerful way of
Yeah.
executing ideas. So those are the things that, one's more general, one's specifically about procurement, and then underpinning it all is the people who help you achieve what you want to achieve.
It's so true. I think pretty early on in my career, I always liked to think that I could do everything, and it really started to click when I read a quote actually, which was, "If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room." And I think it's just kind of
That's
getting
nice. Yeah, I like it.
in a way to think, right, there's people around me who are much better at everything than I am.
Absolutely.
Certain things, and if we work, if we share information and we help each other, then we'll achieve so much more. It's just that was quite.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right, and I think it's one of the it's that other thing around sort of starting to understand what leadership means. It's the not being afraid to show some vulnerability. I can't do everything. I don't have all the answers, but do you know what?
Yeah.
Between us, we do.
Absolutely.
And that is that again, there's a lot of power in that in saying I'm ultimately I'm just the same. Just because I run a function doesn't mean that I know all the answers, because I absolutely don't.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think are some of the key focus areas for procurement at the moment?
Yeah, I think right now it's like I mentioned earlier on. I think it's reflecting on how we want the function to come out of COVID, and how we keep evolving the value proposition, so that as people's priorities start to change, as the world sort of moves away from the pandemic. I'm not going to talk about the new normal because I hate the phrase, but the world moves away from the pandemic into what the next situation looks like. What's procurement's role in that? I think that's some ideas around that, but clearly I hear it in every webinar and every session I attend is sustainability, what that means, and what procurement's answer is for sustainability. And in my own organization, we have a new leadership team in place, and they are absolutely clear that sustainability is at the heart of what they want to do, which is fabulous, actually. So because I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I've seen it sort of get slightly more important, and then over the course of the last 12 months it's really become a really key focus. And I think, again, as procurement leaders, I don't think you're going to be a procurement leader for too much longer if you don't have a answer to what is sustainability for you. So we've been working really hard on that over the course of the last 6 months to really define what we want to do over the course of the next 2 to 3 years in this area, and what our answer is to it. So I think if you aren't talking about it and not just talking about it, but doing something about it, then you're missing something.
Going a little bit off piece here, out of interest, what are you guys doing in the way of sustainability?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So we have defined what we mean sustainability for us. And if you think about I work in a professional services organization, so the bulk of our procurement is on services. It's on other professional services rather than goods.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, if you maybe a slightly more traditional view of sustainability is around the environment and around how you are lightweighting packaging, how you are looking to zero carbon emission your supply chain. There's less opportunity for us to make a real impact on that. So we've adopted a three-stranded approach. We're looking at it through an environmental lens, a society lens, and an ethical lens. And for each of those, we're defining what we expect of our suppliers and what we will do ourselves. And that is really progressing quite well. There's a lot of buy-in from the organisation. We're also working with a number of external agencies to help educate us. Actually, I am 42, and some of the concepts in here are relatively new, and I need educating on them. So we've defined our framework, and we're now going to push that out. We've done simple things like revamping our RFP, our questions, our weighting. Actually, simple things that actually mean something. To say this is it's now so important. We're actually going to make the sustainability section as important as commercial. And
Nice.
to bring that to life, this week, hopefully, we are for the first time in my career, about to make a supplier selection decision where sustainability was the deciding feature. Now that is that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers because I'm pretty certain it's going to go through because it's sorry.
I said, keep me
I'll
posted.
keep you posted. Yeah. But no, we will. It's really exciting. We're sort of eyes around the table and said, well, if we're serious about this, one of these guys knocked it out of the park. One of these guys didn't. So let's stand by it, which is fabulous.
And I think you run a team of circa 11 people, David, if I'm not mistaken. What do you look for when you're running an interview process and looking to hire somebody into your team?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? I suppose I need to be careful because I don't want, in any recruitment process, I don't want it to be just my view, because I've obviously got a view which is subject to my own opinion, and it's not necessarily the right opinion. But basically, I'm looking for people who are genuinely passionate about applying the possibility of procurement into a business setting. What do I mean by that? Procurement's not rocket science, right? There's a process. We can argue over how it needs to evolve and all that sort of stuff, but there is a process. But it's people who understand that the potential of procurement and the things I talked about earlier around the strategy execution, the supplier relationships, how it works with people, and how you translate that into a business environment. So I'm looking for people who are really good people. I need people who can work with other people, because procurement, one question I always ask people is, why do we exist? If you took the procurement department away, people would still buy stuff. The world would not stop working. Why do we exist? And there's no real right or wrong answer to that. It tells me something about the way they think about procurement, the way they think about the profession and how it's evolving. My personal answer to that is that procurement exists because we take the time to really forensically understand the needs of the organization, challenge those sometimes, and we understand the supply market, and we put those two things together, and that's the value add of procurement, right? It's not necessarily raising purchase orders, or even, I know this is a bit heretical, saving lots of money, but it's about getting the most out of the money that you spend. I also need folk with a track record of problem solving, because I think the way everything is, the function and businesses are starting to evolve, this sort of siloed category management approach needs to evolve in itself. We're going to be working in a more agile manner. We're going to be working much more collaboratively, much more cross-functionally to solve business problems. And therefore, if you need to have a procurement how do I get the most out of the supply market mindset, a problem solving mindset, and a people mindset to work in those agile teams to deliver the business outcome. And then the one that always surprises me when it doesn't come up in the top 3 or 4 skills that you need in procurement is negotiation. Maybe I might be slightly old fashioned, but I believe really strongly that is also our value add. It's if you've got a medical problem, you'll go to a doctor. If you've got a legal problem, you'll go to a lawyer. But if you've got a buying problem, well, we all buy. We all negotiate our houses and our cars. But procurement people should be really trained in it and do it on a daily basis. And if you're not a really top negotiator, then, and it's not a natural strength in you, then I do wonder about your role within procurement. I do think it's a really, really important part of the role.
What do you think makes a good negotiator?
Being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's the best, and actually, it's actually, funny enough, it's a lesson we've learned from COVID as well, right? So we've all got this environment. I'm talking to you over this. It's slightly uncomfortable way of doing things, but we've kind of got getting more comfortable with it. And if you're to be a great negotiator, you need to set aside your human need to be liked and to be fair and to be reasonable, because it's not about being fair or unfair, because that means different things to different people. It's about understanding that your job is to get the best outcome for your organization. And if you're doing it strategically, that might mean ensuring that the other side gets a good outcome as well, because you need to work with them for 5 years. But also it means that, you know, you're in this pressured environment, it starts to feel uncomfortable. And you have to be comfortable with that feeling, because otherwise you start to leak value.
I've heard that one once before, and that was when I first started in my recruitment career with a FTSE 250 recruitment organisation that I won't name now. And it was one of the senior directors. He came in and he gave some training to all the newbies, and he just said, "Get comfortable with being uncomfortable." And that was the first thing he said. And we were like, "Well, what does he mean by that?" And he said, "You need to be able to ask the difficult questions in this job to get the job done. And the sooner you can master that, the sooner you'll get it and it will click."
I think that's entirely right. I think it's you know, you can look at all the models tend to, if you look at, you know, if you are within your comfort zone, you're not progressing, you're not learning, you're not developing. You have to push yourself or be pushed out of it to start to grow and develop to get to the next stage. If you turn up for work and every single day looks the same, feels the same, and you largely crank the same handle, you're not doing the best by your team, certainly not the organization. You need to be pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to be able to push it onwards. And it's the same in negotiation. You know, you're dealing with people, and ultimately we sort of want to be liked, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I want to be liked all the time. I want to be liked by you during this interview process. But if I'm negotiating with you, I have to set that aside a little bit to say, well, I'm trying to get the best outcome here, which means that I'm going to be asking you things that I know are going to be a bit uncomfortable for you. And there's a reciprocity there, and I have to be aware of that. Acknowledge it, because I'm human. I can't pretend it doesn't exist, but make the most out of it. Same with as you're progressing with you know, developing your team, developing your strategy, asking some awkward questions and being prepared for some awkward answers.
Absolutely. What would you say is the biggest achievement or achievements in your procurement career so far?
I'm glad you said so far, because I like to think the biggest achievement's still to come. I don't know what it is yet, but I like to think that way. I think things that spring to mind when you ask me that take two forms, and you'll probably get a sense that I quite, you know, for a lot of my answers revolve around people, but it's quite important to me. And I remember really clearly the first time that I told someone who worked for me that we, as a sort of middle management team as it was then, had agreed that she was to be promoted. And it was that sense of both pleasure that somebody's ability had been recognized, not just by me, and that I, you know, put a good case forward, but there was also a sense of responsibility. You know, I'm actually impacting someone's career here. This decision that we're helping to enact, and, you know, all the work that she'd done, and I just helped facilitate it. But the first time that happened, that felt really important. I think on a work achievement front, individually, probably again, there's a lot of firsts here. The first time that I had followed a really true strategic sourcing process, I think it took about 4 months, and at the end of it, we signed a multi-million-pound, multi-year contract. The first time I'd done that, that was a pretty special signing moment. I remember getting suited and booted for the supply chain director to sign the contract when we had pens. But I think undoubtedly, sort of overall my career has been what I'm doing right now. It's standing up, making the case for and winning investment in the team to deliver. And I think I have to say that because it came off the back of some real wins we'd made in the firm, implementing a P2P system alongside an OPO no pay policy. They don't necessarily sound like groundbreaking stuff, but for a law firm, pretty groundbreaking. And really raising the visibility and credibility of the team, and that work the team had done got us into that position. So that felt at the time, getting that approval. Again, the first time that I've done that was a really big day for me. Really enjoyed that.
Excellent. And what skills would you say are essential to being a procurement leader for anybody looking up to you, perhaps as a senior buyer or maybe a category manager with aspirations to be a head of one day? What advice would you give them?
Skills essential for a procurement leader. I think You need to be able to demonstrate that you can do the job, I think. I know there's a bit of a trend for sort of moving people into functions. You can learn procurement, but I do think that it's good to be able to show that you do know how to do a cost spend analysis, that you do know what a good supply market analysis looks like, and that you can negotiate, actually, because if you're putting yourself in as a procurement leader, then I do think you may not be the strongest negotiator in the world, but you should know what that negotiation process looks like. But I also think that, and I don't think this is necessarily true for a procurement leader, you have to be able to influence. You have to be able to communicate in an effective manner. I mean, look, we are, slightly flippantly, procurement's job is to sort of persuade other people to do what we think is the right thing to do, working collaboratively and such, whether that's internal or external. You have to be able to network, because if you don't have the support amongst your peers, you're not going to be successful. When the time comes for you to stand up and say, hold on a minute, we can't take this decision because of this, you need to have the credibility behind that to be able to explain why. So I think definitely, communicating and influencing and being able to build a team. You have to be able to build a team around you. Look, we've all worked for people who've got different management styles and leadership styles, and they can be successful. But I remember somebody I used to work for describing to me that the way to motivate people was to take all the pressure that you feel and then just to push it onto people, and just because then they'll be more motivated to learn. I don't believe that. I think you have to be able to help people on a much more sort of individualistic basis, give them reasons why should they be successful, what are they going to achieve. So an ability to work with people, which goes to the communicating and influencing. Those are critical, I think, for procurement. I mean, any function, but critical for procurement.
Has there been anyone in your career so far who's had a big influence on you?
I was thinking about this question, and I don't think I can name one person in particular. Lots of people have influenced me, from people who helped me realize early on that they had skills I didn't, and they could help me sort of fulfill my knowledge of strengths-based leadership. Probably my dad, to some extent, either consciously or subconsciously, he got me thinking about the business world and seeing how much he cared about what he was doing. But it's also his fault I support Newcastle United, so maybe not him. I'm really fortunate to live with a really supportive partner who's also a psychologist. So she's really helped sort of drive me on and help me think through some quite difficult problems sometimes and how to approach them. And then aside from that, I think I'm not going to say influenced, but certainly inspired. I was on a webinar a couple of weeks ago, listening to the guy who went to Afghanistan to set up mobile banking. It's a fascinating story. It's the sort of stuff you'd make a film over, and it's listening to stuff like that. And his basic theme was around collaboration where you'd never expect it. And that has a resonant effect to me. So I think, well, we have to think about where do we collaborate? We can't always go to the places that seem the most natural to do. We have to think about where we might have to go to places that either, frankly, they're people we don't really get on with, or they're different types of business, different types of organization, but they're the types of things we need to think about being more open-minded towards. So things like that have a real influence on my thinking.
Now, outside of the business world, what do you like to get up to in your spare time?
Well, right now it's a bit of a challenge outside of the business world. So I have a 13-year-old son and a 2.5-year-old son. So they keep me pretty busy. I have a 65-kilo Newfoundland dog. Wow. Who is lovely, but she keeps us very busy. She's quite demanding.
Are they the ones that used to pull boats?
That's right. Yeah.
I met one of them when I was taking my cat to the vet, and there was people behind me who had one, and it was the most impressive looking dog I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, well, yeah, they are pretty impressive looking, but they take a lot of looking after. And
sure they do.
when they want to go, they tend to go. So it's she's she heard a dog outside that I was on a call, right, with the first call I'd ever had with a new team member who joined virtually. I was chatting to him for 30 seconds and I heard this almighty row. And she wanted to get out to a dog. She had literally smashed her way through the fence. The fence panel was out into the middle of the road, and she was leaping and cavorting around this dog. So I had to excuse myself from my new hire to go and rescue this poor lady. So yeah, she keeps us pretty busy. But other than that, since moving back to the north, I've really got into fitness. Bit of a challenge at the moment with the gym shut, but I have a couple of kettlebells I like to swing around of an evening to keep me fit. And since I have got back into the gym, that means I've got into my other half would say an overly obsession with healthy eating. So weighing out my rice and chicken and broccoli of a lunchtime. And aside from that, I mentioned earlier, I am fortunately following Newcastle United, which is a bit of a curse at the moment, 1 point above the relegation zone, and cricket, which equally has not been the happiest of stories over the course of the last couple of weeks of the tour in India.
Nice. And if you could give any advice to your younger self, David, what would it be?
Oh, that's easy. Be more confident in yourself. Be more aware that you have a voice and you can use it. I spent too long thinking these people have got decades more experience than I've got. Why on earth would they want to talk to me? What right have I got to talk to them? Let's do my work over here, and it might filter up and they might like it. And it's to be more to anybody, be more confident. You've got a brain, you've got a voice, you've got experiences I certainly don't have. I want to hear what you think. I would definitely say that be more aware of your own capability and more willing to find opportunity to showcase it.
Fantastic. And other than the fact that you've got a 65-pound dog, tell us an interesting
kilo dog.
Kilo. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That is a big dog.
She's a big dog. Yeah.
Tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Oh God! Right. So I tell you what.
I'm
not so sure what an interesting fact. I'll tell you an interesting story that happened 2 weeks ago. Right. It gives you a sense of my life at the moment. I think hopefully you've gathered from this. I believe very strongly in strengths. Right. In playing to your strengths. One of my strengths that I don't have is DIY. Right. And despite knowing this, I persist. And my other half wanted a stair gate at the bottom of the stairs. We have a stair gate at the top of the stairs, wanted a stair gate at the bottom of the stairs, and she'd got the stair gate. And I said, fine, I'll go and put this stair gate up. Half an hour later, we have 2 blackened, burnt holes in the skirting board. I have burnt my arm on a red hot drill bit. I have broken the drill, which is now in the bin, and the stair gate is on its way back to Amazon for a refund. So that is... I need to listen to my own advice and play to my strengths and not attempt things that are completely beyond me.
Being a big reader of literature, I'm sure there's a few that you've read over time. But do you have a quote or a personal motto that you live by that's kind of stuck?
Dear. Yeah. Gosh. It's hard to answer this question without sounding slightly pretentious.
I know.
But having studied English literature, I think, and my other half being a psychologist, the phrase that always sort of comes back to me is from Hamlet. Polonius is, quote, "To thine own self be true," and I think if you can hold true to that, you're in pretty good shape. Be authentic, because if you're not, people find you out.